Hey guys, it's Teaksy here and welcome back to the channel. So at the beginning of this year we stepped back on to Black Ops Cold War for the first time since Modern Warfare 3 released, and since then a lot or the majority of my content has been Black Ops Cold War and has been specifically content that has been leading us up to today's video, where I'm hopefully going to be answering the question of is Black Ops Cold War worth it in 2024. Now, I appreciate that this game is 3 and a bit years old now, and later on this year, October/November time, we are going to be getting the next Treyarch installment in the Call of Duty franchise. But this game's been really good to me in terms of the enjoyment I've had out of it and the content I've managed to make. And we obviously did a video on this last year, and I kind of just wanted to do an up-to-date video to try and keep Black Ops Cold War as alive as possible as we head towards the next Treyarch game later this year. So today's video is going to be split up into 4 parts, of which there will be timestamps down in the description below. I'm initially going to start by just talking about the game in general and about some of the basic things about it and how it kind of plays out and some of the things I like about it. I'm then going to touch on the player count based on extensive testing done by myself both on PC with crossplay on and PlayStation 5 with crossplay off. We're then going to very briefly touch on skill-based matchmaking, and then I will end the video with kind of an overview and will give my kind of final opinion on whether or not I think it's worth it. So from the moment you load Cold War up, it instantly feels like a Treyarch game. It's got a very traditional feel to it. It's got that kind of arcadey feel. It's a very vibrant, colourful game. I feel like Infinity Ward, they normally do kind of realism quite well, whereas Treyarch definitely keep that kind of arcade feel, and I always think when a game's colourful, it just automatically makes it a little bit more, I don't know, enjoyable to play on the surface. It's probably the most fundamental COD in the last 3 to 4 years. I think probably the big thing for me in this game is the spawn system. The spawn system is there's a lot of logic to it, which makes the spawns kind of predictable once you kind of learn them, and I think that's something that's always a big thing in Call of Duty, because nobody wants to just have somebody randomly spawn behind them when they're having a good game. On top of that, obviously you've got red dots on the minimap, dead silence as a perk, 150 health, and also map voting. Now I appreciate that those points might not have quite the selling point they would have had a year ago, because obviously a lot of these things have been brought back in Modern Warfare 3, but there's still positives of Cold War that I felt were worth mentioning. The movement in Cold War, you only have sprint, there's no tac sprint. There is slide cancelling, but the feeling is not quite as fluent as sort of Modern Warfare 19, Vanguard and Modern Warfare 3. It's overall a little bit more slower and a little bit more clunky. I enjoy it myself, but it might not be for everyone. The gunplay feels very good, but again, I think movement and gunplay is always kind of a personal preference. I do enjoy it on Cold War, but it is naturally a little bit slower than some of the other games we've had, and the slide cancelling is not quite as perfect as it feels in some of the other games. Score streaks, you get rewarded for streaks in Cold War, and you can definitely dominate a lot of the matches, specifically using like the hand cannon, the war machine, and the harp, which is like an advanced UAV. It possibly is a little bit too easy to get streaks in this game. I know the score streak system was a big talking point when this game was in its prime, but ultimately, you know, you can get streaks because it doesn't reset when you die, and you know, you can definitely dominate games. And I always think that's a really big thing in COD. You know, if you can get streaks and you can kind of get a benefit from them, that's always a positive thing. There's a good selection of maps. You know, a lot of the maps in this game are mainly got the kind of classic 3-lane map design, and you've got kind of some old school favourites in here like Raid, Standoff, and Slums, along with some really good maps, sort of just general Black Ops Cold War maps in there as well, and it feels like there's a really good map pool to play with. The Gunsmith is not quite as complicated as it's been in other Call of Duties, and there's definitely some really good in-game stats to help you build some decent class setups. Submachine guns are incredibly powerful in this game, and I kind of compare it a little bit to Modern Warfare 2 2009 in a way where there are some broken weapons in this game, which I know is not always a good thing, but I don't know, there's just something about it that makes it quite fun when you can just go on some crazy streaks with some really powerful SMGs. And you can also build some really powerful class setups in this game with the wildcards, specifically with like Perk Greed, where you can run like Flat Jacket and Tactical Mask together, along with Ghost and Ninja. You can then add in some other perks that help towards your score, and then run that with the field upgrade of like Assault Pack, and you know, that all builds into the score streaks because it's all done on score. And yeah, you can just build some really powerful classes on this game. The camo grind in this game is really, really good for multiplayer and zombies. It's possibly going to be a little bit difficult to do the camo grind in multiplayer in 2024, because I know that back in 2022 I was struggling because there's some game modes that you sort of specifically need to help you with that. And although this video is mainly aimed at multiplayer, the zombies experience on this game was a lot of fun, and being able to grind out the zombies camo was a lot of fun. I can't really speak for whether or not zombies is still populated, but zombies in general was a good experience on this game. Now, Cold War did run with the seasonal prestige system, but the max level is now 2,500, so if you were to get the game off fresh now, you could work through the 26-27 procedures in kind of a normal way. Although it didn't work like that when the game was actually out, there's no resetting in the game now. Max level is 2,500, so you could work through it like a kind of a traditional prestige system. So overall, I think Cold War now is a very polished experience. I think it feels like a very good hybrid between new school and old school Call of Duty gameplay. I think it could have benefited from some extra updates, but of course, you know, the studios, they work on so many games now, it's very, very difficult. But yeah, Cold War, it kind of suffered in its prime days. It maybe didn't have the content there on day one and in the first year, but the finished Cold War game that we have now is very, very decent, and is a very good experience. So now, guys, I wanted to move on to the player count in Cold War. So of course, we don't have official player count numbers anymore within the games, but I did some testing, as I said earlier, both on my PC with crossplay on and on my PlayStation 5 with crossplay off, to kind of get an idea of what the matchmaking was like. I played 5 games in all of the main game modes to kind of get an average kind of wait time from either loading in from the multiplayer menu or from going from game to game, because the lobbies do disband here on Cold War. So on average, it's about 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes to find games across most of the main modes. That's including Team Deathmatch, Domination, Hardpoint, Search and Destroy, Demolition, and Nuketown 24/7. Free-for-all/kill confirmed were a little bit longer, more kind of over the 2 minute mark, as you might expect. And then game modes such as Control and Capture the Flag are virtually unplayable. There are some other modes or other playlists in the game. I did not do in-depth testing on these modes, but Snipers Only, Gunfight Tournament, Face-Off 6v6 and 12v12 Mosh Pit, I was able to find game modes. And then there's a few other modes where I didn't actually do any testing on these, which were Fire Team, Combined Arms Mosh Pit, Knife Fight, Infected and Party Games. So I can't really say if these modes are populated, but I could probably safely say that Fire Team is probably not, because I've not been able to play that game mode in quite some time. Combined Arms Mosh Pit was quite difficult to play a couple of years ago, so I imagine it's the same now. And for Knife Fight, Infected and Party Games, I couldn't really say. Of course, I just kind of wanted to cover the main game modes, guys, really, and I think 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes average time to wait for a game is not too bad on a game that's 3 and a bit years old, specifically on PC, but also on console with crossplay off. It didn't really take that much longer. And I think naturally matchmaking is a little bit longer now with skill-based matchmaking being in the games. So overall, I think the player count is still in a good place, and the game is definitely still playable across multiple modes. So next, I wanted to touch very briefly, guys, on skill-based matchmaking, because it's such a huge part of Call of Duty now. It's always a big talking point when a new game releases. So in Cold War, of course, skill-based matchmaking was there, and it still exists to this day. However, it's not quite as strict as it once was due to the low player count. Now, this doesn't mean that there's not still some really sweaty, high-level players playing the game. Of course there is, and you will run into these players. You will also run into the same types of players, the same kind of names, specifically if you're playing like a specific mode. Like, for example, I play a lot of Demolition, and I do kind of run into the same names from time to time. But overall, this game's skill-based matchmaking is nowhere near as bad as when it was in its prime. You know, every day is different, but I think one thing I would say is that if you are fresh to Cold War, you are going to have to give this game a chance, because at the end of the day, people that have been playing it for 3 years now, they know the game inside out, they know all the good guns, they know how to play the game. And I think if you got this game now fresh, it might feel a little bit horrible to start with, but don't put it straight down to skill-based matchmaking. Of course, it's still there, it still works as it should do, but with the lower player count, it does give you a lot more mixed lobbies, and as I said, every day is different. So my overall thoughts, you know, I absolutely love Cold War. It's probably one of my favourite Call of Duties of all time. I've had a lot of enjoyment from playing this game and specifically doing content on this channel. I would never hate on Cold War, but I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job properly making this video if I wasn't, to be honest. So I think if you already have Cold War, I think it's 100% worth coming back and giving this game a go in 2024. As I say, there's still a lot of people playing it. You can still play a lot of modes, and personally, I think the game's really enjoyable. However, if you don't have the game and you'd have to go out and purchase this, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because it depends how much you're paying for the game. If you could get Cold War quite cheap, it may well be worth taking that risk. But I think the big problem at the moment and the unknown is how much Cold War is going to suffer later on this year when the next Treyarch game releases. I think that's the big thing, because I know for myself, when the new Treyarch game comes out, I'm definitely going to be moving over. And even if I don't like the next Treyarch installment, I don't see myself coming back and playing as much Cold War as I have in the last 2 or 3 years. You know, I love this game, but I've played so much of it, it's getting a little bit stale for me personally now. And I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same. So I think that's probably where the big risk is, guys. If you already have this game, I would 100% say it's worth it. If you don't have it, it very much depends how cheap you can get the game. And I think as well, you'd have to take into consideration a lot of the things I said earlier in this video. You know, does this sound like the sort of game you like? If you've liked other Treyarch Call of Duties, I think you'll like Cold War. But if you're more of an Infinity Ward Sledgehammer type player, you might not. It's very, very difficult. But at the end of the day, like I say, I would never tell people not to get this game. But I think if you've got to go out and purchase it, I really would consider how much you're paying for it before you go ahead and jump on. But at the end of the day, guys, you know, there's a lot of unknowns at the moment how this game's going to suffer. I don't think it's going to die when the new Black Ops game comes out, but I think you could see a significant drop in players, and that's when the kind of waiting times and specific game modes might become more difficult to play. But yeah, I hope this video has been useful, guys. You know, I didn't want to go into too much kind of detail. I think already we're at like sort of 11-12 minutes of recording, so I don't really want to go on too much more. Like I say, Cold War's just been such a good game for me, and I just felt like I wanted to do an updated version for 2024, try and keep this game alive for as long as we can. And yeah, I just feel like this game, you know, for me, it's my favourite COD in the last 4 or 5 years. So, you know, I'm going to be a little bit biased in places, but hopefully we've backed it up with some of the information in this video. And of course, if you want to see more, you can go back and watch my video on this from last year, or any of my Cold War content if you want to get more of a feel for the game. But apart from that, guys, if you have found today's video useful, please do hit the like button down below, and obviously let me know down in the comments, guys, if you're still playing Cold War. If you're brand new around here and want to find your way back for more, please do consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, guys, I hope Ryan's a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.